Hey, everybody. Happy Thursday. Welcome back to Tech Backstage. I am joined today with Brian Cordero, the founder and CEO of GreenClick Technologies. Brian, how you doing today?
Yeah, having the best day of my life. What can I say?
Awesome, man. That's great. Well, thanks for taking the time to join us and to talk about GreenClick Technologies today and this great industry. I think you guys are trying to disrupt right now, and I excited to talk about it. As a frequent traveler myself.
hmm
These are a lot of issues that I'm familiar with. But before we dive too far into the topic, can you just quickly introduce yourself to the audience, a little bit about your backstory and how you ended up coming to, found and be the CEO of GreenClick?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Brian. I'm the founder and CEO of GreenClick Technologies. It's the world's first self-serve and contactless rental company directly at hotels. And so basically in the US today, out of 76,000 hotels that are in the US, less than 1% offer on-site rental services. So basically some of my first questions were like, okay, why is that? And so generally when you look at those on-site venues, they have about a 300 by 300 square foot room. They have like 2 employees manning the stations usually. And they usually operate at really small time windows. And so, I essentially was like, okay, why don't you use technology to disrupt these over the counter desks and be able to kind of like illustrate this market a lot better and be able to cater guests an on-site rental service, at hotels. And so my story kind of started as a um, I had an opportunity to be the head of growth at a company called Speed Legal, which was a data extraction tool by the founder Hans, who was a part of Plug and Play, which is a venture-backed startup. Um, I had a lot of learnings, a lot of opportunities there. After I dropped out, when I dropped out of DePaul University, and then did a lot of learnings, being a venture-backed company, and then of course like GreenClick was this thing that I started, but very very early. And so when I got in touch with Hans, he was like, hey, this is pretty impressive what you're doing. So that's how I became the head of growth there.
Cool. I got a couple questions there. First off, I love that you own that you dropped out of college, and I love
Yeah.
that it's like right there on your LinkedIn profile. I did the same thing. I just couldn't sit through class, and the teacher would be sitting there and like trying to teach something on the board. And I'd be working on something else on my computer already like building web apps and stuff. So college was tough for me. But I'm curious because I mean, you're pretty young. I mean, as far as CEOs and founders go, right? So how did you? And this is probably not an industry that you like fell into. So how did you identify this kind of this issue in the market, and how did you come to decide that this was something that you wanted to try and tackle?
Yeah, absolutely. So funny enough, right? So back when I was 18, I went to a private high school. It was called University High School. And so there is a parking lot and you had to pay $50 for a parking pass. So I didn't want to pay for it. So I just parked on the side of the road, and it was just an additional extra 5 minute walk, right? And so I did that successfully for a full semester. And then the first day of the second semester, I'd gotten a parking ticket, and it made me so mad. It actually
Right.
it made me so mad. I went to the library, I was like yelling at no, but basically, it got me to start to think like, this was like my first like kind of like issue with like transportation and things like that. And then I started thinking, okay, what if we had this ultimate like TNC service? And so I was thinking about, okay, like, how can I create like a tech heavy automated solution? And I started thinking about like how a lot of people were being affected by tickets. And basically my solution was to have this box to, basically have a valet person grab your car, take it away so that it wouldn't like, you wouldn't get a parking ticket. And then, that opened my mind to like transportation on all abroad. And so, I started thinking about, as an early founder, I was like, okay, I'm gonna search for some of the best resources out there. I look at Y Combinator. Paul Graham has a significant amount of books. Starting in startups, and just leveraging all those resources, and being able to kind of coordinate, a successful startup, and being able to leverage, being builders, or being builders, not really operators in this space. And then that's kind of how I like created my first like tech product. And essentially like creating this, finding like a very powerful team. My co-founder Sahil, pretty much, we've been able to develop a very strong value proposition, not only for users and guests, but also be able to really develop a significant, company around it.
Yeah, that's great. And I love that, you had this idea and then it obviously like evolved into something else, which I think it's very indicative of, the process of being a founder, right? You have an idea, you iterate on it until you improve it to I literally was just on a call talking to one of our advisors about sharpening our unique value proposition at our company. So it's one of those things where it's like you start out with this kind of like broad vision and you start out with this kind of like general idea, and like the way that you described it's perfect because a lot of my friends who are founders and have started product companies, that's literally how it starts. They're doing something, they're like, oh man, I this sucks, I should try and solve this with technology, right? And then so you start working on it, and then you start like iterating on your idea and like focusing in sharpening your value proposition until you get it down to something like what you guys have at Green Click, which is a unique value proposition that I think goes into kind of two industries that are ripe for disruption, right?
Absolutely,
Because
and that.
go ahead,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, absolutely, and that's really interesting, right? It's like in a post-pandemic world, hotels have been hardest hit with like layoffs, like with layoffs, workforce, and things like that. And really, where the industry is kind of headed is like autonomous, like contactless services, contactless check-ins, things that you can tap on a door and then you get to enter your room. It's kind of like those types of technologies, but and so they're really open to kind of being technology to technology.
right,
But one of the bigger things as well is kind of and something that's a lot more faster paced is this electric shift to combustion vehicles, gas powered vehicles to electric. This is one of the biggest automotive transitions happening in history.
right,
So I'm the executive chair of mobility and future cities over in Stanford V Lab, and so I get to sit next to some pretty amazing people in the automotive space and who have a deep network actually. And there's a lot of clarity in terms of like where battery builders are doing, or how they're building new battery packs, as well as like autonomous like market share capabilities like that, and even more so like who's really gonna like take over some of these like well household name brands like Ford, Stellantis, those companies like those, Chrysler. And
yep,
with these new incumbents who are now like saying like, hey, Ford is spending $20 billion to retrofit some of these like operations. How can we as a new startup kind of like create a new vehicle, things like that? So like you'll see like cars like Canoe, Indy V, just to toss out a couple names, really try to kind of like create their own market, things like that. So it's like while you kind of have these two things, there's a drip between the rest of the companies, kind of like rental cars, that they're all, because all these companies, all these sectors are being affected. So where I'm coming in is like, I'm taking a lot of these strategies and a lot of different approaches and really kind of combining it together with GrainClick, and essentially using this to my advantage, to create a really amazing product, essentially.
right.
So really taking advantage of the time that's happening. So
Yeah, and so like one thing I want to shift to really quick too, you're talking a lot about, the disruption that's happening in the automobile industry right now, but also like if we take a look at the rental car industry, I think one of the things that you and me were just talking about backstage is it's really kind of a common user experience is if you're at a traditional legacy car rental and you get there, like, if you're at the airport or something, or even if you're not at the airport, right, there's typically this kind of long process that you have to go through. You have to fill out some paperwork, you have to give them your driver's license, you have to get the insurance, they have to check everything, they have to like go through and make sure that you document any damage on the car and that you sign off on that. So talk to me a little bit about how are you guys cutting down that wait time? How do you guys as a as an kind of you're an automated technology, but how do you guys get through a lot of that procedural stuff so that I could just literally walk up to a lockbox and click the button and say, hey, I want to rent this car, and insurance and like the, confirming that I'm a driver, like with a driver's license, like all of that stuff's taken care of, and it can just pop open and give me the key to the car that I want to rent. Talk me through a little bit of how you guys are solving that problem.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the rental market, the rental industry and the rental market abroad is kind of like split into two kind of competitive groups, which is like you have traditional like Hertz, Avis, National, where they do have those stations that, tenants, and there's deposits, things like that, and all of those features, or not features, but generally like things that are needed to be able to rent out a car, making it a seamless and a frictionless experience for users. It again is focused on, how do you kind of like, you know, kind of like, retrofit and really uh, use the newer technologies that the other market segment like Turo, Get Around, companies like those are using to again focus on, or using technology in that frictionless environment, and like how, you know how they're already kind of like developed like a really frictionless like experience. So Hertz and Avis and National, they do have those manned stations, and generally what they're really focused on is kind of getting the ownership of vehicles, and so they're focused on the like owning new fleets and such like that maybe, automated technology, self-serving, contactless isn't really on their priority. But you got Turo and Get Around, who are generally really already focused on digital keyless entry, things like that, and but are kind of like held by their community, their marketplace that they built, which is, those hosts and things like that. So really, kind of where GreenClick is kind of like tying this together is like both Turo and Get Around have like hosts that are dependent on creating that turnover, making sure that a renter gets their car. But Hertz basically and Avis and these national rental companies are already kind of like taking a hold of that because they own the vehicle, right? GreenClick is kind of like tying both of these two things together, where Hertz and Avis own the cars, we own the cars, and Turo and Get Around have all these digital keyless technologies, frictionless experiences where you can upload verification, where you can upload your driver's license and things like that, and combining it so that we're kind of like a hybrid between the ownership of vehicles like Hertz, but also the seamless and frictionless experience that has already been kind of like developed from like Turo
Right.
and Get Around. And so really we're combining it so that we're creating the most simplest way to rent out a car,
Yep.
and basically combining the best of both worlds into one. And
Yep.
and again, doubling down on a hotel, because when you go to a hotel, right, it's like it's a resort, it's a great experience. So
Yep.
really, again, we're focused on a lot of simplicity and a lot of like frictionless experiences, and that also
Yep.
ties on to our mobile application and what else we do.
Yeah, and I love what you just said too. And I was going to bring up Turo as well, because that's actually an app that I use quite a bit when I'm traveling because I hate the traditional rental car experience. But at the same time, one of my biggest complaints with Turo is like unless you're renting a Tesla or some other really modern, I don't think there's a lot of cars that currently work with their keyless entry like the Teslas do. But I've never I think that's the only car that I've rented that actually has the app unlock. But then so now all of a sudden there's a couple things that you're dependent on, right? The you're dependent on the marketplace, you're dependent on the host. It's kind of up to the host to maintain the car up to the standards that the marketplace expects, but there's no quality control involved, right? And at the same time, you're kind of dependent on coordinating with them to, for pickup and drop off, right? And so
Mhm.
those are pain points because if the car shows up and it's not what you expected to rent, or if the host is late, or any of those other problems, then all of a sudden you're kind of like stuck with a car that you got 45 minutes after you were supposed to get it picked up, right? So there's still a lot of there's still I still think there's pain points in there that need to be solved, and I see where GreenClick's kind of coming into the middle of that. And so just to be clear too, like you're saying you guys own some cars, but you also work directly with rental car, like legacy rental car agencies, to actually give them the ability to have this like this on-premise presence at hotels without the overhead of having to have a manned station there at the hotel all the time.
Well, now you're talking about like acquisitions and like mergers and acquisitions and like who we sell to, like j- like I mean, when you go deeper into the iceberg, there are other types of like fleet owners and other companies that are looking to also dominate the market share
Yeah.
in terms of Hertz and Avis. But we don't directly work with Hertz and Avis and
Okay.
companies like those. Um, but uh, but who we do kind of like really are, who we really do like to partner with is automotive companies. And
Okay.
so uh, with automotive companies, the thing is like hotels have this amazing consumer saturation
Right.
where guests are traveling, it's a hotel, so you place a very nice car, a car that's not like a Tesla but a Tesla competitor like a Lucid Air or a Mercedes EQS or something along the lines of that, and even smaller companies. And we're like, hey, listen, Mr. Automotive Company, I'm going to enable a couple of travelers to drive your car who've never seen your car, especially one who hasn't driven an electric vehicle. And, I create the best experience for them. What's on the table. So, so that's why we really like working with automotive companies. We have a signed letter of intent with one company that I can't disclose just yet, but they're going to be a part of our one of our first launches, quarter one of 2023. And so essentially again the same thing goes, where it's like, we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna create this amazing environment for your bikes and vehicles, and then be able to create a significant type of ride on our platform. And then we get to kind of like leverage some pretty good bikes, and some pretty good vehicles. So
Cool. So let's shift gears a little bit. So, I know we've talked a lot about like rental car companies and the automotive industry. Talk to us a little bit about, your, I guess, your relationship with hotels and kind of what we were, circling back to, which is the over the counter, the desk, like the OTC desk, industry. Like, talk to us a little bit about how you're, integrating with them, and why they see this as such a valuable add-on to the services that they provide.
yeah, of course. So hotels are always finding different types of amenities and features to kind of once again revolve around guest stays. Some of the new hotels that come up today on new property hotels that are being constructed are really now focused on new tech enabled, like completely revolving around technology. Remember, I think some of the quotes that some hoteliers have given is like, hotels are supposed to be like a home. Like, you come in, it's supposed to be this revolving thing, and that's like it's supposed to be a homey feel. And technology is starting to be adopted into our day to day lives. We have phones, we have Alexa, Google, we have all these types of things, and so that's where hotels are kind of like starting to include, right? And one of the things that is kind of like in this industry or in the hotel tech space is again these contactless and self-serve check-ins. So I've seen some hotels like in Europe kind of like deploy these contactless check-ins where you go into the hotel, you got a front desk, you're able to like completely check in, and then you're able to grab your cards and things like that, and you're able to go into your room. The thing is we kind of synergize with that because we're trying to create this contactless solution, and we have our second versions and other types of prototypes that we're developing that is a lot more aligned with like the depth of the iceberg. But essentially we're kind of including like that, we're kind of including these hard tech prop tech technologies into these hotels, and again aligning with what the industry is going towards. So again, the hard tech and prop tech is kind of like very synonymous with like the new technologies that are coming out that are taking over some things. And then in addition, we're providing an amazing amenity to kind of create this more full limited service, and again creating it independently so that GreenClick takes care of the rentals and things like that, and again the hotel is basically this concession for us essentially. And so again, like we revolve around that full experience of like renting out a car, creating one of that best experience where you're not going to a legacy company, but you're also not going to a peer-to-peer marketplace. You're going for kind of like the two best things at once at a hotel.
Right. Yeah, no, I love that. So, just out of curiosity, because I noticed you have the lockbox behind you and like a
Yeah.
toolbox, and like it looks like you got the
Oh.
guts kind of opened up right there. Uh,
Yeah.
so that kind of made me think a little bit. First and foremost, because I know that you guys, a lot of this is mobile enabled, right? But talk to
Yes.
me a little bit about without going into too much detail about anything that might be proprietary, but understanding that this is, at the heart of it, it's an IoT device that interacts, probably via the internet with mobile devices. But talk to me a little bit about some of the challenges that you faced as a founder, kind of building out this green click ecosystem so that, I could pull up my phone and, hit the button and the lockbox just unlocks right in front of me. Like, talk to me, what's it been like building something like that?
Uh, difficult.
Yeah.
Basically, like a hard tech product is going to be 100% more difficult than a SaaS product, right?
Oh
It's
yeah.
like a SaaS product. You can optimize. If you have like a team of engineers, you're able to develop what you need to and be able to compete. And the only thing really is like market competitors, enterprise, go to market, and really again, what's your value proposition against other people? But with a hard tech product, like this is pretty much set in stone. I can only do such things, right? So really, I took like what is the simplest approach? What's the most user friendly approach from like other types of like other hard tech products out there? And I'm like, this is completely independent to all of this. And again, we're basically like culminating this whole thing. So difficulty is really like what could we have done like on the first go around, and then once we deploy and with our testings that we've been able to do, like where what else do we have to do to add on to it? So it's like with this product, it has to do what it has to do, which it does. But but also like because it's a hard tech product, you have to think about supply chain. You also have to think
Right.
about like prototypers, things like that. I was quoted once $100,000 for this, and that wasn't that was I'm not gonna get to the second call on that.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
like but of course, like there's um there's other like other startups, other firms, solidifying a supply chain for a budget. We're able to do that pretty enough to create a very solid box. And so I guess the difficulties really was like timing, being able to find and coordinate with the right person. Again, even a CTO is it's like marrying a person, right?
Oh yeah.
You have to create a founders pact. You have to be smart about things, and you have to kind of build. And that's the same thing that happens with any other person you interact with and joins and works with you. So like we were fortunate to find a person who was able to develop the box pretty nicely. Right now it's like the guts are a little bit hanging out, but that's because I'm doing a couple little smaller things again, some things that were a little missed. But like really the true difficulties to building this product was the supply chain, the time that it took, and again like and really like what else could we have done to add on before the production of the box. So nothing really too technical, but that's where like the mobile application, that's where we can kind of do a lot more of like more changes and things like that.
Cool, dude. So we're coming up on time here in a few minutes, but one of the things I'd love to talk about too is I always like talking to people about kind of future tech and what's coming up in the future. I noticed you're a fan of NFTs as well, so I'm assuming that you're a future tech guy. But talk to me a little
Oh
bit about what's up.
yeah, no, of course. Actually, I was crypto 17.
Cool.
So like way before Web3 had been taken mainstream, like Bitcoin Cash with Roger Ver, who is or the fork, the big fork. But like I used to trade Kraken. I used to like how like you transfer coins, what's called like gas fees now.
Yeah.
Basically, if you were to transfer coins from Coinbase to Binance or anything else, there is a way to do it without having to pay a gas fee. So you transfer to Kraken, and then you transfer directly to Binance or anything like that, so that you wouldn't pay like $40-$50 at a gas fee price.
I'll have to try that.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. Well, I'm not too sure if it's there, but of course, like those are some of the things back in the day that you could do, and now like like, so yeah. NFTs are very interesting.
Nice.
It's digital art
Yeah.
in my eyes, and so that's what it
Yeah.
is.
But just kind of along those same lines, like talk to me a little bit about what do you think the future holds for GreenClick, and but also how do you see the way that future tech's evolving right now? How do you think that might affect your product roadmap and the way that you and the company design the product and go to market?
Right. So, I mean, one of the biggest ones is like blockchain, right? And what most people say is blockchain is a is a public ledger with a built-in audit trail, right? It's like that's
Yep.
essentially what blockchain is a one-on-one transaction, and like there's a lot of layers that are being developed, and so with GreenClick we can already kind of see where the development is kind of heading in terms of
Right.
like what our main core solution is. So I mean, we can already see it in our roadmap, what we're ready to kind of develop, and again, be able to re-innovate, keep innovating, and keep developing really innovative products. Blockchain is definitely content is definitely a part of our roadmap actually. So that's definitely something to see once we start kind of like announcing a seed stage, once we start hitting more than 15, 25 locations, and then, raising a pretty solid seed round to go ahead and build out a core team, for blockchain development. So, but I mean, as far as like where the rest of the industry is kind of like bullish on, with like Web3, it's really about different types of protocols. And so, like, one of the protocols I was really interested in was this one called Pope. Pope is a proof of attendance protocol. So basically, like, say like this event was like had like an after party, right? The after party, you'd give off a little certificate, like a tech backstage, like, type of like medallion, and
Right.
then you would be like, hey, yeah, I was there, and then you'd have like this like virtual cupboard covered that like shows you these types of like trinkets. And so that's what I was bullish on, because there is a real consumer application, there's real users, and it wasn't like an ICO token, or it wasn't anything like that. It's really about finding different types of layers in technology. And so um you know so I guess, like, if there is validation in the Web3 market, it's really, what application can you like really kind of like retrofit, and I guess like and I guess like also like, you know what can you do with a one-of-one product. It's
Hmm.
very interesting, it's very interesting, but again, it's just, a one-of-one product that you can transfer. So NFTs are just really art that you can transfer one-of-one. Coins, it's a monetary, coin. It's money that you could do one-to-one. So really, GreenClick is like keys one-to-one, right? And
Right.
how we apply that. So yeah, it's
Cool,
interesting.
dude. Yeah, it's very interesting. Great, dude. Well, dude, first of all, thanks for being here today. I appreciate you taking the time to walk us through what you're doing at GreenClick. I think it's really cool. Like I said, I'm excited to see the ability to actually go out and I'd love to find kind of this intermediary between Turo and legacy car rental companies. I love what you're doing too with the direct to like actual relationships with the car manufacturers. I think that's a really cool spin on something like this, just because like you said, it gives them the incentive to put the cars out there. And that's one of the things that I always like to do. Like before I even drive a car, or before I even buy a car, it's like test drive doesn't really get you anywhere, right? Like it's like, cool, you're going to take it around the block. But if you're going to go try out a Mercedes EQS or something like that, that's almost a completely different type of machine than anything that, has traditionally exists. I remember the first time I drove a Tesla and I hit the gas pedal, and just the way it responds, I was like, oh, this is way faster than anything else I've driven. And so, but at the same time, like being able to give somebody the ability to rent at the hotel they're staying at, a car that they could potentially be looking at purchasing sometime in the near future. I think that's a pretty cool spin on things too. So
Yeah, of
Very,
course.
very interesting stuff, dude.
And I guess and also on our mobile application, when you do enjoy your trip, renting out a car out through GreenClick at hotels, there's also a button on our footer. It shows you events. So,
Oh, cool.
so like any types of events that are happening, when you stay at a hotel, you really don't know what's going on around you. But
Yeah.
since we're your mode of transportation, what we're also looking to do is do events. So any types of interesting things that are going on, looking to kind of like provide that in, and it's a very interesting twist rather than providing different types of offerings for a car, but rather just one rental and really doubling down on your experience.
Yeah, and as I was going to say is like, like this, as well as like integrating with the rest of the hotel, there's a lot of other things you can build out on top of that once people are starting to use it at the hotel. So I think there's a whole world of features that could even go on and be built upon the platform. So
of course, and hotels and hotel owners, management companies, like this sector of like transportation has always been looked at as like an expense and things like that. So kind of opening the mind of like the possibilities, and also again the electrification shift. The government, when Joe Biden went to Detroit, they had after like a month out had like announced, or a day after, and announced like a $900 million fund for the electrification shift because of how like government pressures are like starting to push on electrification. So yeah, it's very interesting how the automotive sector really works, and how GreenClick again is just really tying all these things, and at the end of the day providing a great consumer product, and again just not having to spend so much time at an airport like that.
Yeah, I love that. Cool. Well, Brian, we're out of time, but thanks for joining us. Before we go, Carlos, do you got any announcements for next week?
Absolutely. We have a full week, except for Monday, which is we do have a full week. Monday, we're not be having a show, or you're going to be out of town. But let me tell you what's happening next week, folks. First of all, on Tuesday, we're going to be talking to Manuela Zoning Sign. I hope I got that right. So it's the CEO of Cadea. And then Wednesday, we're going to be talking to Daniel Curran, the CEO of Custex. This is an interesting company, folks. So I'm not going to tell you what it is going to be about. Stay tuned. Just show up, and you're not going to regret it. Thursday, we're going to have a special edition. We're going to be talking to Omar Soto from development. Of course, we're going to be discussing all things talent recruiting in the software industry. So you should all be here. If you're watching, and if you're an engineer, you don't want to miss this one. And finally, on Friday, we're going to be talking to Jonathan Curran. He's the I forgot to type it in there, but he's the vice president of cybersecurity at QCRH. So we have a full week, as you can see. So folks, join us next week right here. Next week, one more thing is that 3 of the shows, and I think this is going to be this one here. The one on Tuesday is going to be at 11 o'clock in the morning Pacific. Then this one, the one on Wednesday, is going to be at 12 noon. And the reason why, folks, that we're shifting time is because going forward, all Tech Backstage's shows are going to be at 12 noon officially. So expect that, please. We're kind of adjusting right now schedules from previously scheduled interviews, but going forward, expect them at 12 noon. Join us right here and be here or be square. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Carlos and Brian. Thanks again for being with us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.